الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن استنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين. All praise is due to Allah, and may Allah's peace and blessings be on the last Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and on all those who follow the path of righteousness until the last day. The topic of this evening is there a true religion? Actually, the official topic was the true religion. You are all Muslims, and this may be what they call preaching to the converted. So let us look at it from the perspective of how we would explain to others. So I'm not trying to convince you that Islam is the true religion, but how would you address questions which people would raise with regards to the authenticity of Islam? Why should Islam claim that it is the true religion? So, in order to look at this topic properly, we need to start before the true religion, at the point where we ask the question, is there a true religion? Because if we're talking to people coming from different backgrounds, we also have to deal with the dominant trend in our times, which is the trend of the atheists, who don't believe there is any religion. They don't believe there's any God, therefore no religion. Religion must be all made up, etc. So we have to be able to deal with their thought, understand where they're coming from, and to be able to give a logical response to their arguments. Right. So, to answer the question, is there a true religion? We first need to ask, is there a God? For the atheists who say there's no God, that would be the starting point. Is there a God? Is the belief in God, as atheists perceive it, blind faith, a delusion, right? The God delusion, which has been written as a book, a bestseller. We have to deal with this issue. Is belief in God merely blind faith? Or is it in fact quite reasonable and logical? And that it is the disbelief in God which is based on blind faith and is illogical. Because either those who believe in God are correct, those who believe there is no God are incorrect, then the claim that those who believe in God are in fact following only blind faith, it's just emotion. And that belief is illogical. When thought out, it's unscientific, it's everything else. Implying then that the belief that there is no God, that is the logical belief. Right? So, what we have to say to that is that the vast majority of human beings have always believed in God. Those who denied God's existence have always been a very small sector of humankind. No matter where you go in the world, in the middle of the jungles of Borneo, Philippines, South America, in Africa, people believe in God. Only a fraction, a very small fraction, actually do not believe in God. And even if you consider Russia, which was under the communist yoke for 50 plus years, decades, indoctrination, all the children in school being taught there is no God. There is no God. Because communism represented atheism as a whole system. It was incorporated in that system. And that's why, Stalin and others, they loved Darwin, because Darwin was the explainer of why things are the way they are, from a biological perspective. So they loved him. They were hardcore Darwinian, believers. So the bottom line is that in spite of decades of communist indoctrination, recent surveys which they did, not too long after the breakup of the Soviet Empire, found that in Russia itself, more than 87% of Russians believed there was a God. There is a God. 87%. In Poland, which was again hardcore communist, 92% believed. After all those years of indoctrination, they couldn't. I remember even speaking to one sister I met who had converted to Islam, from China. And I asked her, well, how did you get there after all that indoctrination all the way through school? And she said, yes, we used to, get it constantly. It was constantly at us. She said, but I never believed that. But to pass my exams, I wrote what they wanted me to write. So I wrote it. But inside myself, I never accepted it. I never believed it. And that's the reality. Because as some scientists even suggested back in the 90s, early 90s, some anthropologists suggested that perhaps belief in God is genetic. It was nature, not nurture, because that's the whole struggle for the anthropologists. What is nature, what is nurture? And they've clearly identified the categories. That nature is what we find among human beings everywhere, whereas nurture is what appears in some places and doesn't appear in other places. Like this, it's scattered. So that basic rule that nature is what is everywhere, they proposed that perhaps this was inherent. Of course, they were laughed out of the conference and when they made this proposal, and because this just doesn't fit into the model which the so-called scientists, pseudoscientists, have created. In their mind, belief in God is nurture. That's the God delusion, right? However, when we look at the facts, it indicates otherwise. In fact, back in the 90s, there was some scientific research in California, one of the universities there, in which they were studying the effects of on speech and thought and emotions for people who were having brain seizures and this kind of thing in the course of doing the testing, they found that there was a point in the front lobe of the brain that when stimulated, people got these overwhelming feelings of like religion, feeling of God being present, this type of feelings. So they wrote an article from way back then. It's just appeared in the newspaper. It's not around. I saved the article. Anybody who wants the article, I can send it to them. But the list of the article is something. The title of the article was like the human brain hot-wired to belief in God. And this was not Muslims, because we could say if it was Muslims, say, the Muslims, right? They're doctoring their data, and no, these were, in fact, one of the scientists who was doing the research was a Hindu, so hot-wired to believe in God. This is human experience indicates that belief in God is natural. The disbelief in God, that's unnatural, and that's why it is so rare amongst humankind. With technology today and the means to spread ideas, then it's coming at us on a bigger and bigger scale. But even though people are pouring out of the churches in the US, the UK, Europe, leaving the churches in huge numbers, they're not leaving belief in God. They've just given up on the church. This is really the reality. And when we look at the very concept of God being ultimately the creator of everything, it matches human logic that where there is harmony and design in things, this is not artificial. This is made. If we find walking on the beach footprints in the sand, we don't look at those footprints and say to ourselves, how amazing, the sea has washed ashore and sunken into the sand in such a way as to make footprints. That doesn't come to anybody's mind. You're walking on the desert safari, and you find a watch. Nobody thinks to their mind, how amazing it is that the sand swirled and came together and the water fell on it and the heat of the sun melted and made this watch. Nobody, that doesn't even come to our mind. To even suggest that, we say it is ludicrous. So this concept, this most basic concept that design indicates a designer, this is directly a result of our human experience. It matches human experience. Design indicates a designer. To say that design is accidental, that is the explanation for all of the design, it's all accidental, this is completely illogical. This is itself completely illogical. That design would appear accidentally. And of course, for the atheists to bolster their claim, their position, they will make the most ludicrous statements. Like, they will say, if you put 100 monkeys, orangutans, in a cage and give them 100 typewriters and unlimited paper, and as they jump up and down and beat the typewriters, one of them would type out the whole Quran, because they gave them Arabic typewriters, right? So they type out the whole Quran from Fatiha to Nas, right? They say this is possible. We say, no, it's not possible. They say, but if you ask the mathematicians will tell you that the chances of it happen is 1 to the minus 0, 0, 0, 0, like a million zeros, and there's a 1 at the end of it, right? They say, there's that one. Come on. This is just surmise. This is not real. It's never going to happen. And the scientific explanation, of our world coming into being is the Big Bang. Again, have we ever experienced anywhere that an explosion produces design? After the Americans bombed Nagasaki and Hiroshima, they blew people out of existence. They just became shadows. They were, They went through all of the ruins and stuff like that. Did they find anything? No. Anything that was created from those bombs? No. Those bombs only destroyed. So when you say that the Big Bang created all of this design, it's like saying that if you drop enough bombs, atomic bombs, on a junkyard where they keep bits and pieces of cars, etc., eventually one of those bombs is going to fuse the junk in the junkyard, the bits and pieces of cars, and produce for you a Rolls Royce, which will just come rolling out. That's the same. They'll say, yeah, it's possible. It's possible. They will firmly hang on to that. Yes, it's possible. You tell them, what do you mean? If, for example, you put chemicals, color, paint in a bucket, different colors, red, white, blue, green, all the colors, you put them in there, and you threw that on the wall, what are the chances of producing a Mona Lisa? No matter how many throws you made, how many mixes you threw, they say, yes, possible. It's possible. So you see, this is insanity. This is not logical reasoning and thinking. And these people are like big time scientists, big figures, philosophers, etc. They say, yes, possible. Given enough time, it's possible. Our common sense tells us, no way. It's not going to happen. No matter how many times you throw, it's never going to happen. It's just like the first time you threw, it didn't happen. The millionth time is the same. It's not going to happen. So this is why it's not so surprising, to find the leading scientists of the past, people like Sir Isaac Newton, believed in God. When others around him were shifting to atheism, he strongly held his belief in God. He didn't believe in the God of Christianity, the triune God, Trinitarian God. He was actually an Arian from Arius, the bishop of Alexandria, who held, after the time when the Trinitarian ideas were coming up, he and those who followed him from northern Egypt, from Palestine, Syria, and that they were Arians. They believed that God was one and Jesus was not God. That's called the Arian heresy. If you want, a lot of Christians don't even know this ever existed. They don't know their history. So the point is that the belief in God was affirmed by more recent scientists like Sir Isaac Newton, considered to be one of the geniuses of the West, etc. Aristotle and Plato, among the Greeks who founded logic, they both believed this was logical. Some argued from design, some argued from the principle of what they call the prime mover. we call it the domino principle, right? Where if you line up all the dominoes, you've seen this, right? Where people line up the dominoes in all kinds of shapes, up, down, things like this. And then you push the one, and then it all knocks everything down in order, going around. They've made whole rooms of this stuff, right? They like this. The point is that if you don't push that first domino, it's not going to happen. So it's like that cause and effect. This is the cause and effect chain. There must be a force which starts that process that is not a part of the process. Because if you put another domino in front of it, it's not going to happen. And another domino, it's not going to happen. You have to come and push it. You who are not a domino, you have to push the thing to start that whole process going. That's common sense. And even Albert Einstein, he was a believer. He believed in God. He didn't believe in the God of Christianity, but he, amongst more modern scientists, 20th century, 21st century, held this belief. So we can put that aside. Belief in God is logical. Now, we've gotten to the point of where the deists come in, right? Belief in God, you can say basically is theism, belief in God. Now, there's an aspect of theism they call deism, which means they believe that there was a God, created everything, but the whole of the creation is so insignificant that he doesn't get involved. It runs by itself. All right? Just like a human being, if he walks in the street, in the bush, whatever, he sees ants. They're doing things. He doesn't get involved. These are just ants. He doesn't, unless he is a specialist in anthology, he's just going to ignore the ants. No matter, they be living lives which are very complex and complicated and things like this, digging under the ground, but we don't go down there to go figure out what's going on inside the ant hill. We don't. They're insignificant. We don't bother ourselves with them, right? Unless they come and they bite us, get in our homes, and we have to spray them and these other things, right? So in the same way, God is too great to get involved. Right? So this is their point. They stop at that point. Basically meaning, God did not communicate his will to humankind. Right? Because where is religion coming from? Religion is coming from the belief that God communicated his will to humankind. Told us what to do. And that's what the religion is. Doing what God told us to do. So now first you have to believe that God communicated his will. So you have a body of people who believe in God but don't believe that he created his will. Meaning that they say, I believe in God but I don't believe in religion. Religion is man-made. There's so many of them out there. They're all claiming they're right. Human beings, man-made. God didn't bother himself with humankind to go tell them what to do. It's up to us to figure it out. Each person figures out his own way. So the response to that is that this belief is illogical. This is irrational. Why? Because if somebody were to advertise in the newspaper that they're opening a big company, they want workers to come and work in the company, they give them a deadline, a time, etc. People come on that day, company is there, but nobody told them what they're supposed to do in the company. You think they're just going to go in and figure it all out and slot in and the whole company is just going to be working, successfully? No, that company is going to be a failure. It's going to be a flop. Because the people need to be told. Same thing, you send your kids to school, right? New school is open, you send all your kids to the school, but you didn't tell them what they're supposed to do in school. There are no teachers, etc., telling them what they're supposed to do. So what do when they come in? They're going to go and sit in the classroom in rows, everybody waiting for the teacher to come tell them? Or they're going to go to the playground, swing on the swings and slide on the slides and just enjoy. That's what's going to happen. That's common sense. You need to be told. When you buy a refrigerator, you have, instructions how to use it properly, or washing machine, whatever. You need instructions. Without instructions, it's chaos. You're going to destroy whatever you should be working with effectively. So it only makes sense that God told us what to do. If He is the wisest of the wise, His wisdom is infinite. Why would He do something we would say an individual who did that is an idiot? That's what we would say. Somebody who set up a company like that, we will say he's an idiot. He's a fool. No, to say that God created us and didn't tell us what to do, that's like attributing ignorance, stupidity, etc. to God. So logic tells us God, in fact, conveyed His will to humankind. Okay, then the next step. Okay, He conveyed His will. But which now is the religion which expresses that will? That's the next question reached. Which one? When there are all these religions out there, all of them saying they're right, everybody else is wrong. The conclusion which the deists came to was they're all wrong. That's their conclusion. They all can't be right, so therefore they're all wrong. But no, there was another possibility. That one was right and the rest are all wrong. But they don't look at that one. Right? Because it's easier just to say they're all wrong. So it's like a lazy approach to belief in God. Because if they're all wrong, you don't have to worry. You don't have to make any effort. There's no commitment. Do your own thing. Now, when it comes to choosing which in fact is that right religion, we have to go from the point of whether in fact that right religion is automatically the inherited religion, the religion of your parents, your foreparents. Because that's what most people do, isn't it? You're a Muslim because your parents were, your foreparents were. People are Christian, same thing. Hindu, same thing. They're just going according to whatever they inherited. Now, Allah, God, subhanahu wa ta'ala, gave human beings intellect. The ability to think, to discern right from wrong. He gave us that for a purpose. And in our worldly life, we use the intellect that way. If you're going to set up a business, you check the market, the availability of the goods you want to utilize for your business. You work everything out, plan it all out. Use your intellect to choose what is right, what's wrong. But when it comes to religion, most people just go by inheritance. My parents were, so I am. So religion then becomes more of a cultural practice rather than a divinely guided way of life, which is what God would have conveyed to us.